Well, a work for hire is essentially an employment arrangement. In other words, I, Microsoft, hire a bunch of people to write programs, and in the employment agreement it says I'm paying you $50,000 or $150,000 or $500,000, whatever number, plus stock. I'm employing you to do work for the company. The company is going to own whatever you do, or Disney's another example. If you're an animator, because the copyright law generally says whatever you create, you own. So a work for hire, in effect, says whatever you create as our employee, we own. And that makes sense in a Disney context, in that kind of context. Carrying it over to the record business, again, it gets a little bit more nebulous because you're not actually an employee, you're not getting unemployment benefits, you're not on the payroll, you're not even on the premises, you're not even really being supervised by the record label. They're paying you to go do what you think is the right thing to do and give it back to them. You know, they have the right to accept it or reject it, but I don't know that that constitutes the right kind of supervision to make you an employee. As between two writers, you don't see it that often, but you know, it's possible. You could have, you know, in the hip hop area, I have some producers, you know, who I've seen this situation where they'll go to someone and say, you know, in effect, I'll pay you $5,000 or $1,000 or $500 for the, and you'll sign a work for hire agreement with me. Now I own the track, now I take it and I add to it, and then I go as a producer and take it to an artist, and I get, you know, the copyright in it because you did a work for hire with me. Again, it might end up legally being determined to be an assignment as opposed to a work for hire, but I mean, that's the concept. The real idea was for employees of a company, you know, for the company to circumvent the general copyright law premise, which is whoever creates it owns it, or whoever fixes the tangible medium owns it. Well, then what am I paying you for if you're an animator on my movie? I don't want 50 guys that work for my company that own Lion King. You're all work for hire for me. I'm going to own, my company owns the copyright in the end. I mean, that's the only way that makes economic sense. So I think it's more meant for that scenario than for writers working together or for a recording artist signing for a label and stuff. I was involved in a litigation with a fairly big artist where they had a woman was hanging in the studio, a friend of a friend, and sang on the record, and they liked what she did, and they had her double it, and it ended up becoming the hook of the song, and it made all kind of ugly stuff later. I think if you're an artist and you're on the label, you need to get some kind of guest consent. I mean, whether it's work for hire or whether it's just an agreement that says I'm paying you $5,000 and you consent to the use and assign me all rights in your creative efforts in the recording and in the song. Because again, if someone's rapping on a record, they may in fact be writing the words they're rapping. Because without that, you're going to have that person come back later and say, well, we're joint owners of the copyright. Because under the law, that's what we are. If you're making a record and I'm making the record with you, even if I just do a verse or a chorus or whatever I do, when I fix my voice in a tangible medium, I own a piece of the copyright. And of course, the labels want no part of that. And you as an artist signed to a label don't want any part of that either. So I think if you're going to have anybody involved, you know, in appearing on your record, you know, whether it's work for hire or whether it's some other kind of guest artist agreement that's going to say, even if it's one page or one paragraph, it says, you know, I hereby agree that in consideration of getting credit on the record or getting some money paid to me or whatever it's going to be, I waive any claim against you. You own the copyright. You can do what you want with it.